Fogle for a second-round pick in the year 2026? But you could say he is McLeavin' LA. Listen, stop your boos. I'm a dad. I'm legally allowed to say stuff like that, and you have to put up with it, okay? At Christmas, at Thanksgiving, and all summer, all right? All right? I've earned that right. Now, by the way, excuse the appearance. I was at the gym when I got the mega notification that Warren Foegele is now an Ottawa Senator, and I dropped my knees. Seriously, though, this is actually a really interesting trade for LA and for Warren Foegele and for the Sens. And I thought, hey, why don't we bring on Julian McKenzie to talk about the Sens' perspective for this trade? So we're going to bring him on towards the end of this video and ask him a couple questions about where this fits for Ottawa. But first, let's give you the full trade. So the Ottawa Senators acquire Warren Foegele. The Senators are sending a 2026 second-round pick, which they got from the Buffalo Sabres in the Cousins and Norris swap last year in exchange for Foegele, who's 29. Now, they're also going to swap 2 conditional third-round selections, and this is where this trade gets fun because the conditions are long and potentially extremely boring to you. But I figured, you know what? If you are hardcore enough to click on a Warren Foegele trade video, then I'm going to be hardcore enough to read you the conditions. Are you ready? Because according to SDPN's insider, Christopher Johnston, are you ready? Here they are. Ottawa will get the worst of the Kings' own third-round draft pick in the 2026 NHL entry draft, or Dallas's third-round pick in the 2026 entry draft, bracket acquired in a previous trade, close bracket. Los Angeles will get the better of Ottawa's own third draft pick in the 2026 NHL entry draft, or Washington's third draft pick in the 2026 NHL entry draft acquired in a previous trade. However, if both Ottawa and Washington do not qualify for the 2026 NHL playoffs, which is entirely possible, by the way, then Ottawa will instead transfer to Los Angeles the worst of Ottawa's own third round pick in the 2026 NHL entry draft, or Washington's third round draft pick in the 2026 NHL entry draft acquired in a previous trade, close bracket. You know, sometimes I wonder when these teams make these trades, how many hours did these very highly paid men in suits sit on a conference call or on Zoom going back and forth on the conditions of these trades? Like, can you imagine these people? These are very smart people. These are very highly paid people. And they're just trying to squeeze every drop out of that conditional third-round pick. Anyway, listen, it's kind of insane, but those are the conditions. And let's talk about LA and Warren Foegele for a second, because the marriage there has kind of been unraveling for a little bit, like a lot of things with the Los Angeles Kings this season, because, you know, there have been some puzzling exits and ones that kind of made sense. The puzzling one was Phil Deneau. Phillip Deneau got traded in December to Montreal. Montreal needed a center. Phillip Deneau is a Montreal Canadian through and through. I know he played in LA, but come on. And it kind of just dropped in our lap, and we're like, oh, okay. And then this week, the surprise of all surprises, the head coach, Jim Hiller, he made it 50-something games into the season, and they're like, you know what? Enough of you. You're gone. DJ Smith's taking over. And I don't know. It kind of feels like the end of Hiller's run in LA was probably not the best one between the coach and the players. That's the sense I'm getting. And DJ Smith, who is known as like the player whisperer, he was known as the good guy, like the good cop, versus Mike Babcock, the bad cop. That's difficult to say 5 times fast. I'm not kidding. You try it. I got it on the first go. Good luck. So I think they're trying to bring the vibes back up in LA, putting DJ Smith there. And they're also trying to make a run for the flipping playoffs. And, you know, it's funny. DJ Smith, in his opening press conference, acknowledged that they never really got over that insane Game 3 challenge against the Edmonton Oilers. They'd won 2 games, and they were up in the third, and they made a goal challenge, and they lost it. And then they lost the game because they scored. Edmonton scored on the pursuing power play, and Edmonton went back all the way to the finals. And LA, that was their 4th straight loss to the Oilers. That's pain, man. That's pain. Now, GM Ken Holland had Warren Foegele in Edmonton on their first run to the Stanley Cup Finals a couple years ago, and Jeff Jackson let him walk free on July 1st because Ken Holland's contract was up. He became a free agent. So did Warren Foegele, and Rob Blake, who was the general manager of the Kings at that time, promptly signed him. Now, that preceded some of the major exits from the Edmonton Oilers last summer, which includes Dylan Holloway, Philip Broberg, and obviously, eventually, Corey Perry. Now, that came a season later, but that's a lot of people leaving. And these are important people to the Oilers. It's you could tell they're kind of missing them. Now, in LA, Corey Perry's had a great season. The guy is an ageless wonder. He's completely reinvented himself, and LA wants to continue on with him. They want to re-sign him. And it's become pretty clear that they not only want to keep Perry, and they've already signed Panarin for next year, but they want to clear space for this deadline and next year. And Warren Foegele's contract goes through next year. So in order to do that, they got to move him. It's a bit hard for LA, like I said. The firings and the trades, they also lost Fiala during the Olympics. Yoel Armia's hurt. Not sure he's going to be back. And they're kind of fighting for that last playoff spot in the Western Conference right now. And add to that, it's Anze Kopitar's last season, so they have to be all the way in. So the team that Rob Blake tried to assemble, which Ken Holland has now augmented with some pretty expensive and old additions on the back end, well, they need the cap space. So Warren Foegele, when healthy, really useful guy, like actually incredible. He was awesome on the Oilers' run to the finals. He killed key penalties, very dependable offensively, did get 8 points too. So that's good. He was kind of one of those standout role players on that team along with Holloway and Matthias Janmark. And that was 2 years ago though. I mean, his first season in LA after that was pretty darn good. But this season he kind of started with an injury, and LA probably looked at this and said, it's a seller's market. You're going to get great return on your assets. If we can get something great back, which they inevitably did, well, we can parlay that into something else. And it appears Ken Holland is doing exactly that. Again, let me drive the point home. It's Kopitar's last season. You got to be all in. And the cap's going up this summer. You got to see what you can do in the trade market and free agency to make this team better. Now, for the Ottawa perspective, it only made sense that we would ask Julian McKenzie from the Chris Johnston Show to join us. So that's exactly what we did. And joining us from SDPN's Ottawa Bureau, which we have not officially set up yet, but boy, does that sound cool. It's Julian McKenzie of the CJ Show. And Julian, man, I'm curious about this because there's, this is a team that's out of the playoffs. We'll get to that in a second, but I got to ask you this first. What weakness does Warren Foegele address for the Ottawa Senators immediately when he arrives?
The very first thing is penalty killing. If you look at the stats right now, the Ottawa Senators have the third worst PK in the NHL. That has been a problem for them for most of this season. It's particularly worse on the road. The very first thing this addresses is penalty killing. Yes, you can tap into secondary scoring. I know that with them, that's something that they could use, and Warren Foegele's stats aren't necessarily the greatest when it comes to goals. It hasn't been that great of a year. But number one, penalty killing, and that's something that Travis Green will use to his advantage.
Okay, so then 5-on-5, who's he most likely to play with in this lineup? Because, they do have a pretty solid group, and outside of the PK, the advanced numbers for the Sens, if you exclude goaltending, are awesome.
Absolutely. I think right now you put him on a third line with Shane Pinto and Michael Amadio. Right now, Nick Cousins is in that spot, but you could have a really solid checking line with Fogle, Pinto, and Amadio there. That being said, now with Fogle in tow, you got to figure out what you got to do with the rest of those forwards, because David Perron is eventually going to come back from injury. Nick Cousins, I just mentioned earlier, Fabian Zetterlund's there. Stephen Halliday was playing defense during line rushes on Thursday. They got to do something with that.
So, you know what? I just as an aside, it hurts me every time I hear Michael Amadio's name because the Leafs had him and gave him away for nothing. And then he went to Vegas and was very successful. And now in Ottawa, too. It's just, listen, it's never not pain being a Toronto fan, but it is not about us in this video.
I was about to say, you just had to add the Leafs. You had to add the Leafs.
It's main character syndrome. I'm sorry. Now, do the last question I have for you, and I think this is the question on everybody's mind, is did the Sens pay too much, just right, or did they steal Warren Foegele out of LA? What do you think about what they paid?
Right now, I'm leaning towards paying too much. But the thing is, if you look at some of these trades that have happened this week, a lot of teams have been paying too much. So I feel like it's kind of reflective of what this deadline has been to this point. I do like the fact that they are swapping third-round picks. Not as crazy about the crazy conditions attached to those picks. I'm not going to bore you all with all of them now, but at the very least, I knew for the Ottawa Senators, if they were going to add, they were going to have to be creative with the limited amount of assets at their disposal, and it meant having to part with a second-round pick, which originally belonged to the Buffalo Sabres as part of that Dylan Cousins trade they made last year.
That's a pretty good, well, I mean, I guess that pick seemed like it was going to be pretty good, but this year, that'd be closer to like 50 or 60 in the draft, right?
Exactly, yeah. Well, at the beginning of the year, people thought it was going to be a late first. We're talking about a Buffalo Sabres team that is 2 points off the Atlantic Division right now. Not the case.
Okay, bonus question, just one more thing. Do the Senators do anything else?
I think they do. I mentioned the logjam of forwards in their bottom six. Someone's going to, like, they'd have to rotate people in. I also think Stephen Halliday's been, I think, too good to just be sent back to the AHL. I think he's earned his opportunity to play NHL minutes. But the fact that he looked like a healthy scratch ahead of Thursday, that could mean he could be put in a trade. I don't know. But I think this team, they could either do one of two things. They could add towards their defense core. They could probably use an addition for another right shot defenseman. Or they look at the fact that they could be in need of picks and those high prices, and they sell one of those pending UFAs they have, particularly either Nick Cousins or David Perron, and they say, you know what, let's get some picks out of this.
Julian McKenzie, clean, clear, and handsome. And thank you so much for your time today, buddy. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for the time.
So, Warren Foegele, good luck in Ottawa, and welcome back to Canada. And even though I'm a Leaf fan, I wish you well. Unlike Mia Khalifa, who wished you erectile dysfunction once. Not that I know who that is, but that person did that, so I'm told.
Hey, did you like the thing you just watched?
Was it hilarious? Was it informative?
Was it me losing my mind?
Possibly. Potentially. Most of the time it is. Hey, listen, if you like what SDPN has to offer, you should check out more of our videos and subscribe to our channel by clicking subscribe, or Steve will find you.